Bulletin. The National Weather Service in Washington has extended a flood warning in effect until 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for people in the following locations.
The weather.
Because you have a strike on you.
Gone, hits a deep drive.
Sports. Flying. Driving. All these and many more everyday situations involve quantities that change. How can an understanding of the relationship between variables help solve everyday problems? In this module, you will learn the following: that tables and graphs are two ways of describing relationships between variables, how to construct a graph from a table, and patterns in relationships between two variables can be seen in tables and graphs. All pilots depend on an instrument called an altimeter to provide them with information regarding their aircraft's height above sea level. But an altimeter is really nothing more than a type of barometer, a device that measures air pressure. The altimeter measures air pressure and converts it to altitude, which is measured in feet above sea level. Air pressure is then the input, and the altitude is the output. Air pressure is measured in inches of mercury because the first barometers used the height of a column of mercury as a scale. We can better understand the relationship between barometric pressure and altitude if we examine a table showing several pairs of values of these two variables. The table helps us describe the relationship between barometric pressure and altitude, or in algebraic terms, how one variable relates to another. Here you see values of the input variable, barometric pressure, and corresponding values of the output variable, altitude. It's customary to put the input variable in the first column of the table. We can see that when the barometric pressure increases by 1 inch, the altitude decreases by 900 feet. Understanding this critical aspect of the relationship enables us to design altimeters and build modern aircraft. Of course, there are many other tables that may be more familiar to you. Sometimes a table is difficult to understand, and more often it doesn't allow you to see the big picture. So mathematicians have found a way to visualize the information in a table, graph it. When you're driving down the road in a great car like this, you'll probably be tempted to exceed the speed limit. A speedometer helps keep you legal, but just how does this speedometer get its information? A speedometer receives information through a mechanical or electrical cable attached to the transmission. In a mechanical speedometer, one end of a rotating cable is attached to the transmission, and the other end to the speedometer. The speedometer converts the rate at which the cable is turning into a reading in miles per hour. So the input variable is the rate at which the cable is turning, and the output variable is the speed in miles per hour. This table shows the relationship between cable rotation and the speed of the car. Now we'll turn this table into a graph. It's customary to use the horizontal axis to represent the input variable. So we'll place cable rotation rate on a horizontal axis with units from 0 to 500 revolutions per minute, We'll place the vehicle speed on the vertical axis with units from 0 to 30 miles per hour. A pair in the table is represented by a point on the graph. To locate the point that represents a particular pair, move upward from the input value and across from the output value. To complete the graph, repeat the same process for each of the other pairs of values in the table. The graph and the table both display a pattern in the relationship between cable rotation rate and vehicle speed. That is, vehicle speed increases as the rotation rate increases. But the graph visually demonstrates the relationship. Using this graph makes it easy to predict the speed of the car at any RPM. How fast is the car going when the cable is turning at 450 RPM? It's 27 miles per hour. What have you learned thus far? That tables and graphs are two ways of describing relationships between variables. How to construct a graph from a table. And patterns and relationships between two variables can be seen in tables and graphs.